HHS umbrella.
Several web pages, including those related to HIV and LGBTQ youth, went dark on Friday.
History rewritten. Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC.
Join us for On the Media, Saturday mornings at 7 on KSJE, Farmington. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, whose vision is to deliver world-class care, making life better for the communities they are privileged to serve. Offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services so residents can live life better here. San Juan Regional Medical Center, community-owned and operated, here for you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Megan Cullip, along here with Scott Micklin.
Hey, good morning, Megan Cullip.
Good morning. It's been so long.
It seems like it, right?
It seems like it.
But it really hasn't, I don't think.
No.
A couple of weeks?
Well, yeah, but
Yeah. But
you know, I'm
you just
so
saw me
used to
yesterday.
Scott in the morning. I did see you
just
yesterday.
saw me yesterday, so
but
there's
still,
that.
it's good to see you.
But not on the radio.
Yeah.
That was a different event. So, yeah, good to see you.
Yeah.
Here we are. It's a rainy, cloudy, gray...
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's. Oh, that's right. It is Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Aw. You're exactly. It's about many layers of loving and liking people.
So many layers. That's
Yes.
true. Very true. But yeah, good to see you and have you here for our Solutions from the Street program.
That's right.
I was just going to show a little bit about what it's doing outside, if we can see. Let's see. There it is. San Juan College. So no snow here, but if you are traveling around, we do advise you to kind of be aware that it might be a little snowier at higher
right.
elevations,
Yeah.
in colder climates, but it's just rainy here, so we can certainly use the moisture. So we're not complaining about the rain.
No, I mean, I always complain about the rain.
Okay,
But
you
then I
should.
think,
Yeah.
hey, this
Yeah.
is going to help me in the summertime.
That's right. So there you go. So today we are talking about our Solutions from the Street, and we have a great guest who is here to tell us how they address a local challenge in the community, right?
Yes, the Red Cross, which is fantastic they're here because I feel like the Red Cross is such a massive organization across the United States. And sometimes I even wonder, like, what are all the elements that go into the Red Cross?
Right.
You
Like
know?
the red and the cross.
Yeah, I mean, we know they show up when disasters happen, but what does that look like?
That's
So-
true. Well, and I think they do other things that
They
maybe
right.
behind the scenes that we're not always aware
Exactly.
of. So there's that. So anyway, that's a long way to go to introduce our guest.
Yes.
Who is here this morning. Mark Gordon is here, and Mark is the Community Disaster Program Specialist for Northwest New Mexico. Welcome back to KSJE. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Scott. And Megan, thank you for having me today. And I have answers to those questions. So.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, that's good. Well, we'll just sit here while you just fill the rest of the show. No, we're
There
going to
you
ask
go.
you. We'll ask you some questions. So,
Sure.
your job. Talk to us. I guess let's start there. A little bit about your job as a Community Disaster Program Specialist.
I used to be called just the Disaster Program Specialist. And the Red Cross has changed their focus to build community resilience. And so now they've added that to my title. And so my job is to build resilience through the communities through all of northern New Mexico. So I cover 16 states. My supervisor he works out of Albuquerque, so he and I together cover 16 states.
But you live here.
I live here in Farmington,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
So I do a lot of traveling.
Sounds like it.
My Red Cross vehicle gets a lot of miles on it.
I would think so.
But so that my job is to support and facilitate the Red Cross services, what we call disaster cycle services. And so that's my job. We do that mostly through volunteers. 90% of our workforce is supposed to be volunteers, and I'm still building that capacity. So that's one of the things I'll be talking about today.
Okay. Very interesting.
So very, very interesting. So one of the questions I have is, when an event occurs, what is the process?
I'll use a good example.
Sure.
Roswell, not that long ago, just a few months ago, had a massive flood, what they're calling a 100-year flood. They asked me to deploy there, so I was there for 2 weeks, and we opened a shelter because they had to evacuate quite a few people. We had about 20 people in the shelter, give or take. And So what happens during a disaster like that kind of a disaster, usually the emergency managers in that county will contact the Red Cross and ask them to respond. So we will go there, open a shelter, feed people, help them to start thinking about how they're going to recover, because some of them really had a lot of damage to their homes. And some of them were actually homeless prior to that. So they came into the shelter, and we tried to help them find a way to recover and help them find a place to live after the fact. So we have, and this is all done through volunteers. We had a few staff people there, a few employees. I'm an employee, I'm a paid employee.
Sure.
But they had mostly volunteers that are, we deploy the power of volunteers. And that's one of the fantastic things about, we're required to do that. We're required to have 90% volunteers in our, I'm not sure if that's an IRS requirement, but I know it's a Red Cross policy that we do that.
Gotcha. And then I guess with that shelter, how long can you keep that open? I guess, does it just depend on the situation on the ground?
It depends on the situation on the ground. Usually shelters are open around 2 weeks, but sometimes they could be open a bit longer. For example, Hawaii, we had many shelters in Hawaii.
After the fire.
After the fire. And the shelters are closed there, but some of our operations are still ongoing, helping people to recover.
Right.
But a shelter could be anywhere from just a few days to 3, 4 or 5 weeks, whatever the need is. So, and we
Nice.
don't turn anyone away from a shelter.
Sure. Right. And that's an important thing. And again, you can get set up. I would imagine you guys are pretty pro at this, so it just takes a phone call and you can get down there and get set up in pretty short order, which is the goal.
We have what we call shelter trailers that have cots and blankets and all the other things, medical supplies. So we have trucks that are specifically dedicated to hauling those trailers. So we can go pick those up and take them anywhere. We have quite a few of those throughout the state. Our region is Arizona and New Mexico, so we can pull resources from Arizona, from Phoenix if we need to,
Right.
To help facilitate.
Gotcha. And I guess vice versa, too. If they're having something, you
Exactly,
can
sure.
send things from here. And I guess, too, those local emergency managers are kind of pre-thought out maybe what would be good buildings or good areas to use as a shelter and things like that. So when
In conjunction with the Red Cross. The Red
Right.
Cross actually does shelter surveys to make sure that they meet the guidelines and requirements for ADA and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one thing to talk about, sheltering 20 families or whatever, but it's another thing to actually do it and have the restroom facilities and kitchen
Absolutely.
facilities,
Right.
or at least space for them to be able to
Yes.
stay for 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly. And for feeding, sometimes if it becomes a longer operation, we have partnerships with the Southern Baptist. They'll bring in their big feeding trailer. Sometimes the Salvation Army will bring theirs in.
Right.
Excuse me. And they'll set up on scene and on site and they usually do 2 meals a day, and then we bring in like just comfort food for the mornings, or continental breakfast kind of things, cereal and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. And it seems like, and maybe just me, but it seems like we're seeing more disasters in the country, maybe than what we were. Maybe we're calling things disaster more than we were, but I mean, I think about the situation in California, and we talked about Roswell and things like that. We're grateful that we haven't had anything too much locally,
Right.
but it seems like you must be kept pretty busy.
The Red Cross is incredibly busy. The frequency is becoming more prevalent. The intensity of these disasters is getting much worse.
More serious,
More
yeah, right.
serious. And more and more disasters are happening. And so the Red Cross is, in some cases, finding itself a little bit thin, and so one of the things I'm hoping today is to talk about our need for volunteers and what those positions can be.
Great. Well, that sounds like a perfect segue, Megan Cullip, doesn't it? To talk about volunteers.
Let's do it.
Yeah, right?
Well, volunteerism is, I've found that volunteerism has kind of gone down a little bit since COVID, I think. So if people are looking for ways to give back to the community, the nice thing is you don't have to go open a shelter if you don't want to. I need people to do that here locally if needed, but The Red Cross does a lot of things, like you mentioned, Scott, in the background. We help people after a house fire.
Right.
So I have what we call our disaster action team, and they will go and provide immediate financial services just to get people through the first few days. And then we have people that do casework for us, all volunteers.
Okay.
And they will follow up afterwards and try to help people find recovery sources within the community. Those often are few and far between for that particular kind of a disaster, unfortunately. But we do our best to try to help them find some way to help recover. So there's those things.
Right.
Those are volunteers, like I said.
How many do you think you would like to have? I mean, if you in a perfect world, how many volunteers would you like to have that at a phone call that say, "Hey, we had a house fire. Could you reach out to this family?"
We right now I have 4 fairly active volunteers in the community. I'd like to have more because I don't want to overload them.
Sure.
And of course, house fires they're sporadic. Sometimes we'll have 3 in a week, and sometimes we won't have any for a few months.
Sure.
But when they do happen, we need to be able to respond quickly. And so I would like to have double that. I'd like to have 8 people available so that we can, we can kind of spread the wealth. And what we have people that are trained, they get the training, and it's all free. There's free training online.
Right.
There's one course that's instructor-led, but other than that, it's all free training online. They can become what we call service associates. And they can go out and help, and then we have supervisors. So we have 2 people usually. We try to send 2 people out at the same time. And so you can train all the way up to being a supervisor. You can train up to be a disaster action team manager and kind of run the whole program as a volunteer. And that takes that load off of me so that I can do the other things that I have to do.
Gotcha. But there's training that goes along with all of these
yes.
jobs, and so
that.
as you said, it doesn't have to be someone that's setting up a shelter, that's
Right.
unfolding the cots.
Exactly.
They could be working with these other families or in these other capacities, I
Yes.
guess, right?
But I also need shelter workers. I need people that are able and willing and available to open a shelter if the need arises. And typically that would be at McGee Park. That's our
designated
our
space.
designated shelter space because it's huge. Right. There's a lot of space there. They have a kitchen and good bathrooms, showers. They're all right there.
Right.
And people can even bring their pets.
And that's not always the case.
People can always bring their pets
To any shelter?
To a Red Cross shelter.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
That's good to know.
That's become a new policy that we have.
Gotcha.
They can't have their pets in the living space with where the cots are unless it's a service animal.
Got it.
But they can.
You make arrangements.
We make arrangements to have a space for pets, and then they're responsible for their own pets,
of course.
But they can bring them if they need to.
Well, good to know, because that's, I think, something that comes out of some of these disasters that maybe folks have not thought about. What to do with their pets if they're suddenly their house is on fire.
Exactly.
or their neighborhood is unavailable to get back to, or whatever the case may be. And so that's an important thing to maybe have folks know and think about. So good to know.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, what is the Red Cross's funding source?
A lot of people think that we are federally funded, and we are not. We are all donor dollars. And of course,
I didn't know that.
We have to be careful with those. So we're careful to vet when we get a call in. We're careful to make sure that it's not a fraudulent call, because there are times when somebody will see that there's been a fire, and so they'll call the Red Cross, the 800 number, and say, I live there and I need help. And so when a client calls in, they need to have some sort of way to show that they lived there at the time of the fire. And that could be an ID, driver's license with the correct address. It could be a neighbor that verifies they live there. It could even be emergency services that verify that they live there. But we need to have some way to show. And then we actually go out as often as possible. Sometimes it's difficult because it's rural areas. I cover the Navajo Nation as well. Mm-hmm. But we send those people out on scene to verify the damage, because the damage has to qualify as well.
Gotcha. Interesting. Very important. And so with all that, I know there's some other work that the Red Cross does. It seems to me, I remember, if firefighters or crews are out fighting a wildland fire or something like that, and they're out there for several hours at a time or days at a time, I think the Red Cross still supports those efforts and tries to go out to support those crews and things, right?
We will do canteening services for first responders in cases like that. In fact, I did that during the shooting, the downtown shooting on Dustin.
Yes.
So we had a lot of first responders responding there. So they called me, and I brought them lunch and sandwiches. And then we actually had we brought in we have volunteers that are mental health services. They specialize in that. They're counselors. They're trained and they're qualified and certified. So we had people come from other parts of the state,
right,
to sit with us at the community center, and we were available for families that needed to talk to help with that.
So it wasn't just those first responders necessarily.
No,
those services were available for neighbors or anyone else, I suppose.
We were there for over a week.
Okay.
And we had spiritual care. We have spiritual care counselors that can come in and help people that might want to talk to about spiritual.
Nice. Right. That's an important part of this, isn't it?
It's a great part of this.
Absolutely. And that's all free, and we offer that even for a house fire.
Sure.
So people can, if people lose their prescriptions and their eyeglasses, we have health services people that can help them expedite getting those back. We have mental health people, counselors that can talk to them if they want to. They'll give them a call and talk to them as much as they need to, and that's all free. And spiritual care as well.
Nice. Very good. Well, that's great, because again, something, a tragedy like a mass shooting can really impact,
Yes.
a community, a neighborhood,
Yes.
And those first responders, and we're thankful that doesn't happen often in our community. So when it does, it's pretty jarring.
The aircraft disaster that happened at Reagan International.
Yes, in Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C., the Red Cross was there to provide family services.
Nice.
So we opened. It left my mind what it was called. Recovery kinds of services. To
Right, for families.
Bring in families and just give them a place to be and feel safe.
Nice. And that's probably, I would think, within minutes of something happening like that. Is that how quickly you folks were able to get to the terminal and maybe help these folks who are waiting for their family members to get off that plane and then find out that
Usually
there's been a crash?
It might take a little bit of time, because we usually we have to be invited in for that.
I see.
So it may take some time for the FAA to bring us on board, but yeah.
Gotcha. But it would be FAA in that regard?
Usually, yes.
Probably.
Or NTSB.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. Or those emergency managers.
It
I
could
guess,
be
too,
emergency managers, yes.
in some cases. So very, very interesting. Well, we know that the Red Cross does a ton of work around the country and around the world, and so it's nice to kind of hear about some of that. You mentioned that part of your job, you had how many states that you were dealing with, Mark?
I am only New Mexico.
Okay.
But I have 16 counties.
16 counties.
Within New Mexico, in northern New Mexico.
That's where your focus is.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that includes the Navajo Nation.
Right.
In fact, it includes quite a bit of tribal land. So
Sure.
we don't just work with county emergency managers. We also work with the tribal emergency managers and their emergency responders and those kinds of places.
Sure. And we hear sometimes, too, that, on the reservation there's maybe not as much or maybe as fast emergency response as off the reservation. Certainly there are dedicated folks out there who are responding to these things,
Yes.
but I would think if there's a house fire and you may be an hour away from the nearest fire station, so that could be difficult.
I responded just this week
Yeah.
to a fire that took me 2 hours to get there.
Okay.
And so
And was it pretty devastating? I mean, was there anything left?
Actually, that one wasn't a fire. I correct myself. This was a wind incident.
Okay.
Blew the roof off of a mobile home, and so that qualified as part of the damage.
Sure.
So
Still a disaster.
it's a structural damage, yeah, and a disaster. So we provided the same services for that. It could have been flooding, as long as it met certain guidelines. We can help in floods as well.
Right. Good to know. Very good. Well,
Let me just say,
Yes, sir.
I am working to build resilience in those communities so that they don't have to wait for 2 hours for someone to come help them. Another benefit to doing that is that the people on the reservation, typically they know each other. They know the culture. They understand how to speak to each other.
Sure.
And so I'm looking to build those community volunteers to become Red Cross volunteers for us, but they live right there.
Right.
And they can respond quickly. They probably know their neighbors pretty well. There's been a study that shows that the communities that recover the best after a disaster are the ones that the neighbors, they know each other, they know their neighbors, they're familiar with each other. And so that's one of the reasons the Red Cross has changed a little bit of its focus is on building that resiliency within the community.
Right. And that's what we're talking about, and the work that you are now focused on doing, it sounds like, right? And so if folks are listening and watching us this morning and they want to be a part of that resiliency in their communities, what's the best way to get a hold of either you or the Red Cross folks?
The best way is to just go to our website, redcross.org. There's a volunteer tab on there, and they can just go. There's a lot of tiles that will give them the information about the different positions that are available. I haven't mentioned yet, but we install smoke alarms for free, and I need people to do that.
Right.
The training is quick and easy, and when we get these smoke alarm requests, it'd be nice to have people to go out and do that for us as well.
Right. Very good. And how often do you do that? Is it just depending on the supplies that you get?
The supply. We do have an event. We have events every year during what we call our Sound the Alarm initiative. And we try to do that in larger, like I would say, mobile home parks, places like that.
Sure.
So we try to do that in those large areas. But people can call in on one-offs and request smoke alarm installs. And these are 10-year smoke alarms. We don't pull out the old ones. We just put these ones in. The batteries, they're not wired.
Right.
10-year batteries. After 10 years, you need to replace them anyway. So.
Gotcha. Nice. Very good. Another important thing that you do. Megan, I've taken over the interview. I apologize.
I know.
Yeah, I wanted to get a word in edgewise here.
It's okay. I had a case. This is a question that I would love to ask. I had a case of an elderly woman whose pipes burst, frozen burst. Is that something that right? No? Okay.
Unfortunately not. And I shouldn't say unfortunately. It's just the Red Cross looks at disasters that cause major structural damage. And so that's how you qualify to have us come and provide financial services. So pipes bursting, people are kind of responsible for that themselves.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But your roof blows off.
Yeah.
Marks on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If your house, mobile homes, they tend to go up. If they catch on fire, people typically lose everything within a matter of minutes. And so,
Sure.
But we have to see some structural damage that is over a living area, that's within a living area. So.
Gotcha.
Good to know.
Or it has to
great
be
to know.
uninhabitable.
Okay. So if
they
it's
can't
really
move
bad,
back in for at least 2 days, then we'll help them.
Okay. So there's that.
Yeah, that's great to know.
That is good to know. So that's great. What else are we forgetting to ask you about with the work that the Red Cross is doing these days?
We do preparedness
Right.
education for kids and adults. So we have what we call the Prepare with Pedro program. And Pedro is a penguin, and he learns about, this is for kindergarten through second grade.
Sure.
And the kids
Well,
love
I would
this.
pay attention to it too. You had me at penguin.
At penguin, exactly. Unfortunately, we don't have a penguin outfit.
Right.
I think maybe somebody's working on that somewhere, but
Gotcha.
Pedro learns from his neighbor about smoke alarms, about what to do if he hears a smoke alarm go off, how to get low and go. You don't want to stand up when there's smoke in the air because it
Right.
rises. So he learns how to roll down and crawl on the floor and how to get out of the house and where to go and how to plan for that with his family. So
Nice.
then for adults, we kind of give the same presentation, but we don't use a penguin.
Sure.
And that's called our Be Red Cross Ready. So we just explain to adults the same information. Sometimes we have had cases where the kids brought this information home, taught their parents took it to heart and actually practiced evacuating their home and where they would go. And we've had cases where their lives have been saved because they prepared and they
Right.
planned.
And that's
And
another.
the kids did that for them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another important thing, I think, too, right? To be able to have that conversation in your family about
Yes.
what to do in case of a fire or some kind of an emergency. I remember growing up that we had a designated tree out in the yard where we would
Exactly.
all meet if we had to get out of the house, because sometimes you may not be able to get down to the kids' rooms to grab them
That's right.
and get them out, right? And having that meeting place, and then you can do head count, make sure everyone's there.
Yes. And, we explain, don't go looking for your pets. Leave the door open, let them get out themselves.
Okay?
Don't try to
important.
find things that you want to take with you. You need to get down and you need to get on the floor and crawl out and go. And
Right.
get out as fast as you can. Get low and go. So
Sure.
then another program that we have is hands-only CPR.
Right?
So if someone is CPR certified, they can teach that for us, and that's just compressions. We teach people just how to do compressions. Though that has saved lives before. So there's
Right.
no breath, but they just learn how to. And we have a collection of songs that we use. There's a really cool video that we show them with staying alive.
Right?
And,
it's that beat that helps you
Exactly.
remember
It's
when to do the
beat to
compressions,
remember.
right?
Exactly. Yep. So
And that's helpful to remember. So that's great. And you do some trainings on that, I would think, too, for larger groups, do you not? Or can you?
I
If
have.
somebody wanted to get a group together and get CPR certified?
absolutely.
Nice.
To get full CPR certified, pardon me, I've got something going on this morning. We contract those out.
I see.
So they would go to our website, look for classes that are already available for
Okay.
that. But for
Gotcha.
the hands-only CPR, I can do that, and I'm looking for volunteers that we have to be CPR certified ourselves to do that, to teach hands-only CPR. But I'm looking for volunteers that would be willing to do that
Great.
for us.
Very good. Wonderful. Well, Megan, anything else that we need to ask about?
I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
I think we did cover a lot.
We have.
Mark, is there anything we're leaving out this morning?
Well, I might explain a little bit about how the Red Cross started.
Sure. We've got just a couple minutes left, so
okay.
go right ahead.
During,
Yeah.
during the Civil War, there was a lady named Clara Barton who discovered that the soldiers on the battlefield were really, obviously, they were really struggling. And so she went out and started helping them, and she helped soldiers from both sides. And believe it or not, the Red Cross, she founded the Red Cross in the United States. And just from that, the Red Cross has become it is the largest humanitarian organization in the world now.
Yeah.
It's Red Crescent in other countries, or Red Cross, but we are worldwide.
Nice. From that.
From
her
that
efforts.
one woman's efforts, she was good at being a politician, and so she was able to start this nonprofit and humanitarian service, and it has just blossomed. So
Right. Well, I know there are many folks, millions, who are so grateful for the work and the efforts of the Red Cross and the folks like you who are doing that work and recruiting those volunteers to be able to respond to these disasters when they happen, and just supporting our first responders too when they're going to these disasters.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of
most of us are huggers, and when we're out helping people after a house fire, that's part of the. It's not just financial services. It's compassion and giving them support that they need right then, because they're devastated.
Of course.
And so 99% of the time, they are very grateful for us to be there.
I imagine they would be. So very good. Well, Mark, we really appreciate you coming in.
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming and getting through the raindrops to
Absolutely.
join us this morning. And
We need that very badly. So
we definitely do. And to keep up with the great work with the Red Cross, and again, it's redcross.org.
Yes,
is the
redcross.org.
website
is the website to go.
Sign up. And
you can become a volunteer. You can learn all about what we do in our programs, and it's all right there in one place.
Okay, very good. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome. And Megan Cullop, there we are at another Solutions from the Street program.
Yeah.
How about that?
How about that?
You learned something.
I learned, well, the funding question was my big question because I thought they were federally funded too.
Right? No.
No.
So there you go. Very good. Well, thank you all for joining us. We will be back with this program in 2 weeks, so stay tuned, of course. But then if you have an idea for a Solutions from the Street episode, we also would love to hear from you. You can drop us an email.
You could drop us an email at ksje@sanjuancollege.edu. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, just let us know, because Megan and I think we know a lot, but there are things we don't know. And we know we don't know.
That's right.
So that's why we want you to call us or email us and let us know what we don't know.
That's right.
So something like that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So there you go. And a reminder, next weekend we'll be back, next Friday we'll be back with our That's Interesting program on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Fridays of the month. That's when we just throw open the phone lines. It's just a crazy call in, talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Free
Whatever's
for all.
interesting.
That's right.
So let us know, and then we're back on the 2nd and 4th Fridays with this program, Solutions from the Street, from 8 to 9 on Fridays here on KSJE. And then, because Megan never stops working, she's back tomorrow.
Tomorrow with Radio Free Saturday Morning, your eclectic music mix for your Saturday mornings, 9 to 11 a.m.
2 hours? I gave you 2 hours on Saturdays?
For whatever reason,
Wow.
you gave me rain for 2 hours.
Okay.
And, put it on while you make breakfast, while you clean your house, whatever. While you drive in your car to go hiking. Each week I bring you a different theme. This week's theme is hope.
Hope.
We could
Okay.
all use a little hope.
Springs eternal, I've heard.
It does.
So there you go. Nice. So 2 hours of music themed around hope.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Very uplifting.
Yes.
Which will be a very gray, maybe rainy day tomorrow. So
Right.
we appreciate that.
Yes.
How did you plan that? You knew that. Wow. Amazing.
Wow.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. And then immediately following your show is another local music show that we just want to put a plug in for. Scott Duran, our other co-host who joins us for That's Interesting, has a World Beat show every Saturday from 11 to noon.
That's right.
So
and,
third hour.
Yeah, third hour. And you will hear things that you've probably never heard before on that show.
Musically speaking.
Musically speaking.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
Yeah, very good. Well, great. Well, enjoy, everybody. Have a safe weekend and a dry weekend, but we will see you back here next Friday right here on KSJE. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
KSJE and the San Juan College Native American Center present the Student Study Tip of the Week.
Hello and good day. My name is Emin Chi, academic coach with the Native American Center, bringing you coaching tips of the week. For week 4, find a routine. Getting yourself into a study routine is one of the best ways to make sure that studying becomes part of your everyday habit. Figure out what time of day works best for you and make a real effort to dedicate that time to reviewing notes, videos, and other related sources. Pick times during the week to try out your studying. You can try studying in the morning on one day, the afternoon on another day, and in the evening if that works best for you. When there are no distractions at the end of the night, once you've decided which time works best for you, try to stick with that time of day every day for at least 3 days a week to get in the habit of studying constantly. You might wind up rearranging your routine due to extracurricular activities, time with friends, and other commitments. But be sure to prioritize your studies and get them done in one way or another.
The Student Study Tip of the Week is presented by the San Juan College Native American Center and KSJE.